So these are not my good pins, these are my traders. I finally became one of those people that put their trading pins on a whole separate board. So yes, I finally, after years, reached that level of insanity. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the pins that I have added to my keepers, my permanent collection, since it's been a little while since I put up a pin update, so here we go! So I went to Disneyland for the first time in like 10 years, and I went on this ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures. I never really had much love for it at Disney World. It was like a whatever ride. If there was no line, I would go on it. You might know they got rid of it recently, turned it into a princess meet and greet, and built a different Snow White ride, which is pretty good. So yeah, I went on this at Disneyland just because I could, and I couldn't at Disney World, and I loved it. Like, the changes are very, very small. If you look up video of like one compared to the other, the changes are very small, but it was just one of those things where it just clicked with me and I really liked it. I don't even know if I even originally went on it in Disneyland. So this is a piece of Disney history pin. I actually don't really care much about the fact that there's this little bubble here with a piece of cloth from the witch's costume here. I just really like the design of the pin. It's really cool. It really, I felt, captured the spirit of the ride. The apple here is actually sort of a rubber material. It's in 3D. So yeah, just a really, really cool pin. One of the few Snow White Scary Adventures pins that's really, kind of creepy like the ride is. Okay, so here we have Merryweather. Of course, one of the fairies from Sleeping Beauty. Now, Merryweather, she's one of those things where, for me, as an adult, I realized that as a kid, I really, really liked, as a kid, I didn't go around saying, Merryweather's my favorite fairy. Like, going back now and watching Sleeping Beauty, I'm like, boy, I really liked her as a kid, and I was really rooting for her more than the other fairies. There's a bunch of solo pins of her. This one took me a little bit to track down, but I managed to get it for, I think I got it off of eBay for like $9, which is close to the original rack price. Yeah, and I think I've said before, I really like these just free-floating character pins. I like them to sort of be out of a background. And so I thought this one was ideal, especially for this row that I have of sort of smaller characters. So, starting with the kitty cat on the left there, that is of course Figaro. From Pinocchio. Now, my grandmother was a huge fan of Pinocchio. I have an aunt who loves Pinocchio as well. I have never been that into Pinocchio. However, I've always really liked Figaro as a character. On the Disney Channel growing up, they would show the Figaro shorts with Pluto and Minnie, and I really like those. I still do. And I wanted a really good Figaro pin. I actually used to have a little statue of Figaro on my desk as a little kid. And there's a lot of pins of Figaro, but I thought this one was the cutest by far. I really, really like it. Now this one's from Tokyo, and there was very few people on my pin trading site, PinPix, that were actually trading it. And I sent out a lot of trade requests, and all of them came back empty. I kept checking eBay again and again and again. And occasionally it would come up, but it would be going for way too much. Way more than I wanted to pay. So finally what I did was I looked up the people that were trading on PinPix with this pin. And I sent them emails and I said, hey, I really want this pin. Please let me know, if there's anything in my trades that you would want. Because, you can send out specific requests according to what people have listed, but if they don't list any pins that you have, then you can't really send a trade request. So I got an email back from someone in Tokyo, and they basically said, oh, hey, thanks for emailing me. Would you be able to trade this pin? And they picked out a pin that I thought was a really fair trade. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So here it is from Tokyo. I finally got it. Now over on the right there, that would be Pascal from Tangled. Now there's not that many Tangled pins, believe it or not. And there's very few pins of just Pascal himself. Now this is from the Disney Soda Fountain, which is why he's standing next to a sundae. The first one that they released there was him in green in front of a sundae. And that pin goes for like over $100. It's crazy. This one I just traded something I already had for, I believe. And I think it's really cool. I'm a big fan of Tangled. I like Pascal. I think it's a cute pin. So the dog right there, smack dab in the middle there, is Little Brother from Mulan. This is a cast member pin from Paris. You can always tell because of the cast member name tag hidden on it. So see it there on his pop. So yeah, that means you could only get this pin initially from trading with a cast member in Paris, which, if you think about it, is pretty cool that I have it right here in America, having never been to Paris. So yeah, I think I mentioned before in my other video, but Mulan was really the last Disney movie that I saw in the theater as a kid. It was the last time I remember being a little kid, being in that mindset of, I'm excited, this is a new Disney movie. And I was really into it. And Little Brother is just, I don't know, it's just an interesting design. Definitely in contrast to a lot of other characters, which sort of invokes that old feeling going back to sort of Snow White, when the dwarves would just look so much different from Snow White, because of course it was a different animator dealing with them. So yeah, just a cute character. I've always thought he was an interesting character being called Little Brother, given that, you know, so much of Mulan's story has to do with the fact that she is an only child and she is a daughter and she has to take on this role that a son normally would. I thought it was, you know, a little bit tragic, actually, that they named the dog Little Brother, and that she didn't have a little brother, and clearly the family was sort of, in a way, in need of one. Of course, ultimately, we find out in the story, no, then they don't, but, you know what I mean. So, this is from my most recent trip to Disney World. It's, of course, Mr. Toad. It is a rack pin, which means it's not that rare. And also, I got to use a discount to get it, so it was really, really cheap. The coloring is kind of off, and it kind of bothers me, but it is a cool pin. It's nice that they're making a new Mr. Toad pin, and again, I'm into these free-floating pins. I really, really love The Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. I'll talk more about that later on in this video. But yeah, there you go. Mr. Toad, he lives on, despite the fact that they got rid of his ride at Disney World. Okay, so this is my latest pin in my little hotel collection that I have here. This has become one of my favorite hotels. I never really explored it much until I became a cast member in 2010. For a while, I actually had the 2000 version of this pin from the 2000 series in just my trade board. But these little bears fell right off. But this one's in slightly better shape. The bears are a little bit worn out, but that's okay. But yeah, just a really cool hotel, easy to get to from the Magic Kingdom and vice versa. Good food, really good food. Get the berry cobbler there, it's really good. So these two guys, starting with the one on the right there, that is a Friendship. Those are the boats that depart from Studios and the Yacht and Beach Club and the Swan and Dolphin and Epcot and all of that. Little boat shuttles that go from, you know, hotel to some of the parks. So this is from a Hidden Mickey series. It's cast member only. It's definitely one of the cooler Hidden Mickey series that they've done, if you ask me. They came in all the different colors of all the different boats. I don't really care about any particular boat, but the colors of this one just look the most to me like what I'm used to seeing for the Friendship, so I went for that one. And it was easy to trade for. Over on the left there, going back to Disneyland, so that's part of the Casey Jr. train, which is kind of a little kid's ride, but it's really, really fun. It's just the train from Dumbo, and it goes around the storybook boats with all the little replicas, little dioramas of the different characters. Anyway, I never actually went on it as a kid, but during this trip, I went with my friend, another fully grown adult male. And he's like, hey, you gotta go on this. I'm like, alright, I don't see what's so great. And it's way more fun than it should be. So as you can see, this is another Hidden Mickey pin. It's a really, really cool series of pins. And this is the actual caboose. This is where we were seated. So I wanted to get the actual part of the train that we were in. So right in the middle there, we've got Rapunzel. As I said earlier, I really like Tangled, and there's not a lot of Tangled pins. And I was trying for a while to get a good limited edition pin, and then I saw this one on my latest trip for like, it cost me like $6 or something with the discount, and I'm like, you know what, this is a really good pin, this is better than most of the limited edition pins. There's only two things that I don't really like about it. One is that for some reason the outline below her eyes is really dim, it's like a really thin line. The thing that bothers me most is that Pascal on her lap is like in really, really low detail. It just doesn't look that great. Oops, sorry, the focus is being weird. But yeah, beyond that, I thought it was a pretty good pin. Didn't cost me much. Certainly easier to get than the limited edition 300 pins of her. Okay, so in the middle there, we've got Bashful, part of a series of all of the dwarfs with Exxxtreme from the Disney soda fountain. Now, Bashful is my favorite dwarf as a kid because I identified with him, surprise, surprise, as a shy young child. I had actually a stuffed Bashful that I believe I brought with me on the plane to Disneyland as just, you know, someone to accompany me beyond my parents. This one was a little bit hard to attain, but I eventually got it. Didn't pay too much for it. Pretty much the same price as I would have paid if I'd just gotten it from California. Yeah, it's just a cool pin. It's well designed. I don't really have much else to say about it. Alright, so once again, these are close together, so pay no attention to the ones on the left and right. We're talking about the one in the middle, that is Kronk. And he is, of course, from The Emperor's New Groove. Yes, it's another Disney soda fountain pin, because their pins look really, really good. Now, who doesn't love Kronk? Of course, one of the best characters that Patrick Warburton has ever voiced. Very funny, very entertaining, very lovable. Before this, I believe there was only really one solo Kronk pin, and there was a lot of folks trying to get it. And so when this pin came out, I actually got two of them. I bought two of them for a pretty good price. And I almost immediately traded the other one because it was in high demand. But I got to hang on to this one. I wanted to hang on to this one for my own, so there we go. And once again, these are close together, but we're talking about the one in the middle there, Rabbit, yes, another Disney soda fountain pin. Now, when I was a kid, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh was one of my favorite movies, and then the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the show, that was one of my favorite shows. Loved Winnie the Pooh a lot. And one of my favorite episodes, well, kind of, was the one where Rabbit takes in an injured bird. I believe it was called Let Her Go. And that episode just destroyed me. It still destroys me when I watch it. It is way too emotional for a kid's show. I think it is actually the single saddest thing that any Disney production has ever made. But anyway, there was a thing that happened in like early 2000s, late 90s, where I felt like Winnie the Pooh got like misappropriated by the kind of women that would collect like precious moments and stuff like that. And none of the merchandise looked quite right. You know, it was all sort of brightly colored. And I felt like it had completely lost the spirit of Winnie the Pooh. My mom was working at the Disney store at the time, and she said, like, you know, all these women were coming in. They didn't really have much else going for them, and they would, like, demand if, like, the Valentine's Day Winnie the Pooh would come in, and if the Halloween Winnie the Pooh would come in, and all these things. And I just felt like this childhood thing that I loved had been misappropriated, which, if you know the history of Winnie the Pooh, is kind of ironic. But anyway, so that even to this day, a lot of Winnie the Pooh things sort of, you know, remind me of that vibe. It makes me feel like I've lost something. But I felt like this pin, you know, was very much in the spirit of Winnie the Pooh. You know, Rabbit looks like Rabbit, you know, I feel like Rabbit's one of those characters who hasn't really been misappropriated, you know, in that era I was just talking about. I felt like there wasn't a lot of Rabbit merchandise. So I feel like I still have this personal connection to Rabbit, and all that. So, yeah, this is my way of having a piece of Winnie the Pooh and connecting to that piece of childhood without feeling like, you know, anyone else had taken it from me. Okay, so I recently watched every Disney movie that I hadn't seen since my childhood. Pretty much all of them, because I live a busy, productive life. So this is from Fun and Fancy Free, which I remember when I was a kid, my mom was all excited because she worked at the Disney store, and she was like, oh, they're finally putting Fun and Fancy Free on VHS. And I was like, cool! And I watched it, and I was pretty entertained. You know, you got Bongo here and Mickey and the Beanstalk. So going back and watching it as an adult, I was like, you know what, this is really good. I especially liked Bongo's segment, the first half of the movie. And I wanted a good Bongo pin, and so, as I've said before, I really like the meta stuff. And so I liked, you know, that within the context of the movie, this would be a poster for one of the many things that Bongo could do. So This was a very easy pin to get. No one really wanted this on my pin trading site, but I really did, so I have it. So during my trip to Disneyland last year, I went to a bunch of places, including here, the El Capitan Theater, which is this beautiful old theater that Disney bought up, and they use it just basically to show their own movies. It's all Disney movies. It's right next to the Disney soda fountain. It's really cool. And every Valentine's Day they show Lady and the Tramp, my favorite Disney movie. And so I did not get to get this pin while I was there. They started the line at 5 a.m. I set my alarm for like 4:45, and even with jet lag, I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to go to Disneyland. And I did. And luckily, when I got back, I was easily able to trade for this, which really surprised me because these marquee pins are highly sought after. But anyway, that was a happy memory. It was cool to see this movie in the theater for the first time. It was really fun. It was a really awesome theater. I would highly recommend checking that out. And yeah, any given Valentine's Day or, you know, the days surrounding it, you can go see Lady and the Tramp there. So go for it if you're in the area. So, the Skeleton Dance. This was a pin I was trying to get for a while. And, of course, it's the first Silly Symphony short, The Skeleton Dance. If you've never seen that, look it up on YouTube right now. You probably won't like it as much as I do, but whatever, it's really good. Now, this really sticks out to me because there was a Halloween special they would always play. There's a bunch of different versions of it, but the version that I really liked was, I think it was just called the Disney Halloween. And it featured this short among other things. And yeah, I always really loved Halloween, and I loved that special. It featured a bunch of villains and other just, you know, scary things that happened in Disney movies. So there you go. And then this pin was one of those things where I was just sort of looking through my pin trading site, and I found this pin all of a sudden. I was like, oh, that looks cool. I'll put in a trade request for, you know, with something I don't really want. And the person just immediately accepted the trade, and I was like, oh, I guess I have this now, without really giving much thought of how much I wanted it. But I looked at it once I got it, and I was like, oh, this is even cooler than I thought it would be. It's a really great pin. You know, I feel like it really encapsulates the spirit of the movie. It looks really fancy with, you know, the gold around there. Now, The Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad, or the other way around. Adventures of Mr. Toad and Ichabod Crane? No, I think the first one was right. Anyway, one of my favorite movies as a kid. Still love it. You know, it's very unique, I feel, from the others. I remember, once again, we got a VHS of it, I think from Disney World, and I just watched that again and again and again and again, and I hadn't watched it for years in its entirety, and then I watched it recently and just realized, you know, I know the whole thing by heart. I must have watched it so much as a kid. So, when I first started pin trading online, and I really discovered how to find out about all sorts of pins, I thought that the Disneyland Paris pin trading night pins were the ultimate. And true, they are pretty hard to get, and a lot of them are very, very valuable. But I've gotten to the point where I have some pretty good trades, and they are attainable. So this pin, I just happened to have something that I could trade it for. I think I got some other pin trading night pin. And I traded for it, and I was like, oh, I'll probably trade it, because one of my favorite things about this series is that the initial background is there, but then there's so many different characters that go inside that circle. And I think it's cool to see them all together. Of course, I appreciate that, and yet I have Tiger Lily and now Wendy from the same movie, which, you know, isn't much variety. In fact, both these pins came out on the same day. But I still really love Peter Pan, and I really like Wendy, so I guess I'm going to hang on to this, and hopefully I'll get a third Pin Trading Night Paris pin that isn't from Peter Pan. And then I've got the official Conscience pin, of course, from Pinocchio, that the Blue Fairy gives to Jiminy Cricket. Again, Pinocchio, definitely not my favorite Disney movie. Don't like it very much, to truth be told. But I love these meta pins. I love them. This is, you know, one of the rare pins that is a pin within the context of a Disney film, just like my grape soda pin from Up. So there you go. So, this all starts with a plane. I was at Disney World with my family when I was a cast member, so I got them in for free and all that. And we were staying at Caribbean Beach and just having a little vacation. I was also working a few shifts. And we were supposed to fly out with Southwest, but Southwest had the courtesy of sending us a message via text saying, hey, your flight is canceled altogether until tomorrow because there's a snowstorm. So they saved us the trip to the airport, and we were in the parks at the time, so we said, okay, cool, we're just going to stay at the park. So we got another night at the Caribbean beach and went to some other parks, including Animal Kingdom. And while I was at Animal Kingdom, I realized, hey, it's Groundhog Day. I'm going to get the Groundhog Day pin since we're here. So I went and I bought this because, hey, it's an extra day, another pin to trade. And that was just a really happy memory. That ended up actually being the last trip that I did with my mom before she died, unbeknownst to me, at the time. So, you know, I keep trying to bring myself to trade this pin. You know, I've said before, I don't really like new Mickey. I really like, you know, pie-eyed old Mickey. I don't like new Mickey pins, but I've just got too many memories attached to this pin, and I can't really let it go. So, there it is. So, as a kid, my mom developed this love for Mardi Gras, even though she had never been to New Orleans or Mardi Gras of any sort. We went to Mardi Gras at Universal, which I thought was really fun, and I really enjoyed collecting beads. Especially after my mom explained that usually you have to show your boobs to get these. Thanks, Mom. So I felt like I was cheating the system by, you know, getting beads outside of that context. She would throw, like, Mardi Gras parties and, you know, play Mardi Gras music. The one thing I really liked, too, was New Orleans Square and Disneyland when I went as a kid. You know, I really enjoyed that and sort of the Mardi Gras feel of it. And also staying at the Port Orleans Resort, which is Mardi Gras themed. So this is a pin that I got recently. Definitely one of the cooler pins, I think, that has come out of the parks for a holiday. And there we go. Now, I don't know if I've talked about this before. I don't think so. But Princess and the Frog is one of those movies that I didn't really like all that much at first. I thought it was okay, but I've since come to appreciate a lot more. I've listened to the music a bunch and watched it a few more times. And, you know, you gotta love hand-drawn animation. It looks great. It's, you know, I feel in the spirit of classic Disney. And, you know, really marks the sort of rebirth of Disney that we've had lately. Speaking of which, speaking of Princess and the Frog, that is, over here on the right, there's some weird glare. But there we have Tiana. Once again, this is one of the few pins, maybe the only pin, so that's my ability, of Tiana not in her princess attire. Of course, it is a Sunday pin. Yes, we've talked about this. The Disney Soda Fountain Studio Store makes, you know, the best pins, so there you go. And then to the left over there is Bernie from WALL-E, which I have wanted a good WALL-E pin for a while. I'm still hunting some down. But for now, I've got this one. You know, look up the Bernie short. It's probably online somewhere. Yeah, it's really cute, really fun little, you know, Pixar shorts character. And there he is.